Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. My name is Ali, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the top 5 mixing mistakes I first made when I started. So number 1 is not fully understanding what buses are. I think I started off in Logic and I was just using presets and I was applying reverbs directly onto the track, which is fine in some sense, but I didn't fully understand that if I was to bus something, I'd have way more control on what reverb and delay was on the track. Also, using automation on reverb was something that I had no idea about. Also, understanding that you can bus multiple tracks. I know that this sounds like very beginner stuff, but when you first start out in Logic and you don't really understand what you're doing, it can be easy to make little shortcuts and just follow your ear, which is essentially a good thing. But I think it's also important to take a step back and make things easier on yourself. So yeah, don't put reverbs directly on the track, although you probably know that by now. Just don't do it. I mean, you can, but you'll have very minimal control over that reverb and how you use it in the overall context of the mix. Number 2 is not leaving enough room in mixes for mastering engineers. The top advice I received when I first started off mixing is that you want to bring everything in the mix to 0. You want to start by isolating your drums, your instruments, and all your vocals, and work within each of those groups. Bring everything to 0 and start bringing up what you think is important in the mix. I think a lot of times people just get a mix and they set everything to, an okay level, but they don't realize what is vitally carrying the mix. So they start bringing everything up, and you soon will realize you will run out of room, and you start overcompensating and you start cutting out things, and it can get really hairy very quickly. Another thing I learned is to use a VU meter. I believe Waves has one for free, or at least it used to be free, and essentially 0 on this VU meter is negative 23 LUFS, which is typically standard for a mastering engineer. You want to aim for the negative 23 LUFS level, and I know nowadays mixing engineers tend to not really use that standard. If it's higher, they can kind of compensate for it, but I think the standard is there not so much for the mastering engineer, but for the mixing engineer. If your mix can sound really good within the negative 23 LUFS range, it's going to sound really good when the mastering engineer brings it up in volume to the specs for streaming. Don't make things too loud and save space for what's important. Number 3 is A-Bing your mix. Making sure that your mix sounds good on headphones, monitors/speakers, car stereo, and arguably the iPhone. Now, the iPhone is going to sound crappy regardless, but do understand that the end listener of your music is going to oftentimes listen through iPhone speakers. It's what they have. It's available. It is important that whatever you want to shine through needs to be reflected on iPhone speakers. I think car stereos are also very important. I think a lot of people do listen to mixes in their car. Do understand that your bass is going to get boosted incredibly. Sometimes you can help it, sometimes you can't. You don't want to mix directly for one sound source. You want to make sure that it can be good on everything. It's not going to be perfect on everything, but you want something that's approachable and easy to listen to on multiple different listening devices. Tip number 4 is not to over EQ things. Oftentimes, new mixing engineers can find YouTube videos and take what someone says to heart and take it quite literal. So if someone is mixing a bass drum and they say, you cut out all of the high frequencies and only leave in those low frequencies where the bass drum is present, that is good information to an extent. But do know that there is information in the high end that could be usable. It could be valuable to you. Oftentimes not. But in the high end, you're going to get room reflections depending on how you recorded the bass drum. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Make sure that you're listening to all of the frequencies on certain tracks, or you're not just cutting because it's routine. Listen to it, make a judgment, and then assess from there. Also, be wary of phase. You know, boosting and cutting can cause weird phase issues, and listen for that. Don't just cut EQs because some YouTuber told you to do it. Use your ear. Which brings me to my last point. Use your ear. I think in this age of technology, it's very easy to get wrapped up in what our mix looks like visually. We can hit these little markers in these different plugins that tell us, oh, your mix is good. You're hitting this number. You know, your mix is good. Your frequencies are aligning with where our recommended line is. That's cool and all. But if the mix sounds bad, the mix sounds bad. Use your ears. If the end listener is going to listen to your mix and think it sounds crappy, they're not going to be like, oh, but they hit all these points and all these plugins. It should sound good. No, it doesn't work like that. Use your ear. If you can nod your head along, if you can tap your finger to it, if you think that, you know, this is a good mix, then believe in yourself. It's a good mix. You know, go with your gut, go with your ear. Don't get hyper fixated on what it looks like in the plugins or in the DAW. Use your ear and just make it sound good. It's just that easy. So yeah, that is today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I kind of had fun, you know, thinking about all the past mistakes I've made and all of the points where I've struggled in mixing. It truly is an art form, and it is something that takes a while to get under your belt. But it's fun and it's enjoyable, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. It helps me grow the community tremendously. Thanks guys. See you next Friday. Bye.